Dando Nation. Welcome to Talking Smart to the Dando Man. I am the Dando Man, the best there is, there was, and there is to come. Thank you once again for joining me for today's edition of Talking Smart with the Dando Man. In this channel, we equip you as an entrepreneur with the tools, skills, and information you need in order to start and grow your business. So if you're interested in content like that, consider subscribing today. Today we'll be looking at the termination of contracts, how a contract terminates. But in order for you to fully grasp the basics of the law of contract, I would highly suggest that you check out our contract series and start from the beginning and binge watch until today's edition. Anyways, let's not waste any time and let's get to today's video. A termination of a contract basically means when a contract ends, when the obligations of the contract no longer have to be fulfilled. Now, there are various ways in which a contract may be terminated, and today we'll be looking at each and every one of those ways. The first way a contract may be terminated is through the fulfillment of performance. A contract is terminated automatically when both the contracting parties have rendered their performance or fulfilled their obligations according to the terms of the contract. So, for example, I hire you to be the caterer for my wedding, and so then the wedding comes, you cater, and I pay you, and we've basically both performed according to the terms of the contract, and so the contract then automatically ends because of the fulfillment of performance. Another way a contract may be terminated is by set-off. This is when both the contracting parties owe each other money, and so then the debts are weighed against each other and then they cancel each other. So if the amounts are equal, then the debt is extinguished completely and the contract is terminated. However, if one debt is larger than the other, then the smaller debt is extinguished, then the larger debt is reduced proportionally. So for example, I owe you 200 Rand for a book that I bought from you, and then you owe me 200 Rand for a loan that you took out from me. Because the debts are equal, the debts will be extinguished or they will cancel each other. However, if I owed you 200 Rand and you owed me 100 Rand, your debt will be extinguished, but my debt will be reduced proportionally, and so I'll still have to pay you 100 Rand. Another way a contract may be terminated is a merger. Now, a merger occurs when the capacities of the debtor and creditor in a contract then become joined or united in one person. And so then in that case, the debt is extinguished because the debtor cannot owe himself as the creditor. So for example, when a debtor and creditor marry each other in community of property, their capacities will merge because marriage in community of property basically means that the spouse's estates will now become part of one joint estate. Basically, what's mine is yours, what's yours is mine, and they can't owe each other, so that means the debts or the contract will automatically terminate. So what do we get from this? If you owe someone money, you better get down on your knees and ask them to marry you, if you know what I mean. Another way in which a contract may be terminated is through agreement. This is when the contracting parties both agree to cancel the contract. If no performance has taken place, then the contract will be terminated automatically. However, if one or both of the contracting parties have actually performed partially according to the terms of the contract, then there must be restitution by the other contracting party. Another way in which a contract may be terminated is through novation. Novation happens when both the contracting parties agree to terminate the contract by replacing this contract or the old contract with a new contract. So for example, Harvey and Mike conclude a contract for the sale of Mike's car to Harvey for 100,000. However, they then later change the terms of the contract when Mike reduces the price of the car to 90,000. So then the first contract is then replaced by the new contract, which is for 90,000. Another way in which a contract may be terminated is through supervening impossibility of performance. Supervening impossibility of performance occurs when performance was possible when the contract was entered into, however, it became objectively impossible after the contract was concluded. If you want to know more about supervening impossibility of performance and what it means, there is a video in this contract series about the different types of impossibilities and what the effects are. So go check it out as it explains a bit more about it. Another way in which a contract may be terminated is through insolvency. Now, a person is an insolvent only if he is declared by the court of law as an insolvent, and in that case, the court will then appoint a curator to take over the estate of the insolvent, and then the curator will decide on what will happen on the contract, and that will also depend on the type of contract that it is. So, for example, an employment contract ends if the employer is declared an insolvent. The contract of lease is terminated 3 months after the appointment of the curator unless the curator notifies the lessor that the contract will continue. In another instance, if an immovable property is sold to a buyer who is declared an insolvent, then the curator will then decide whether the contract will continue or not. Another way in which a contract may be terminated is through death. And with that, I just became depressed. Anyways, let me gather myself. The death of a contracting party does not usually terminate the contract because the rights and obligations of the contracting party will then pass on to the deceased estate. So, for example, we enter into a contract of sale for the house, then you buy the house, and then as I'm about to hand the keys over to you, you die. The contract will not terminate. Instead, it will go to your estate, basically the next of kin or whoever it is that you stipulated in your will or whatever. In another instance, if I hire you as an employee and then you die, in that instance the contract will be terminated. Another way in which a contract may be terminated is by prescription. An important thing to note is that the passing of time has an influence on contracts, and basically this means that with prescription or the passing of time, certain debts may be distinguished after a certain amount of time has passed. This is referred to as extinctive prescription. Now, the period of prescription usually starts to run from the date that the debt is actually due. Now, the different types of debts have different time periods for when the debt will terminate by prescription. So, for example, mortgage bond debts expire or prescribe after 30 years. Debts which are contained in negotiable instruments such as checks expire or prescribe in 6 years. And so here it is. Our contract is about to terminate. I've fulfilled my obligations by giving you the information that you need throughout this series. Now all that's left from you is for you to fulfill yours by pressing the like button, commenting, sharing this video, and subscribing to this channel. It sounds like a lot, but it's not. It really isn't. It takes about 30 seconds? Yeah. You can go check out our Facebook and Instagram page at Talking Smart and Talking Smart with the Dando Man respectively, and our podcast Talking Smart with the Dando Man, which I am very excited about, and seems like I'm the only one who's excited about it. Anyways, please go check it out on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spotify, Breaker, Pocket Casts, and Anchor as well, and wherever you get your podcasts from. That's it from me, the Dando Man, the best there is, there was, and there is to come. Thank you, Dando Nation, for joining me. See you next time. Remember, you'll never turn your dreams into a reality while you're still asleep.